Bam.
Huge fan of people recording.
I mean,
it's done. It's happening.
It's
and
done.
with
we're in
power,
the moment. This is the show.
Power is going to the mic this time. I'm happy.
Hey, look at that.
I'm proud of you, Austin. I'm proud of you. How about you, Mike?
I'm learning the rudimentary skills of Mike.
Oh, that's a good stretch.
There. Mike's got game dev hair. Austin looks great.
No,
does
that's
look great.
very nice, but no, I've got some major situation going on here.
I'm so jealous of that like classy streak you've got. I think this has come up on the show before, but like
it is
that
cool.
gray
Fantastic
streak in your hair is so
Like rogue
cool.
hair.
It is cool.
The Reed Richards.
So cool.
I got.
I wish
by
that
rogue.
you would just shave all this and just leave that as like a weird silver streak mohawk.
Wait.
Silver
Does this
Streak
go the
Mohawk,
whole
by
way
the way,
back?
is a
Isn't it just
great
in the
indie
front?
band name.
It's localized. It's localized
it's a tuft,
to this
right?
very. It's a tuft. It's this spot right here. Funny thing is, it's been there since like my early 20s, but it has expanded. So it was like a few gray hairs. So I'm like dark brown or whatever you would call the rest of this color everywhere else.
That's good.
And because my dad had a very kind of even like salt and pepper. It was very.
Right.
It was it was a good mix.
90s hip hop group?
This mine looks like the childhood prank of loosening the salt shaker top and being like, do you want some salt for your soup or whatever, and like it just all smashed into this one zone. So
I like it. We all like it. That's been established.
We all like it.
As said,
Mike's definitely
Bithell
got the full peacock going.
currently has
I'm
game dev
going
hair,
mushroom cloud at the moment. Yeah.
because somebody announced a video game
Hair
this week.
ties.
Yeah, buddy.
Someone did. Yes.
Who did that?
Oh, me.
It was you.
Hey.
Oh my gosh.
And the hair proves it.
Yeah, we
The
thought
hair
we'd
proof. The hair is the work. That's the
talk a little bit about that on this episode of Play Watch Listen. Welcome everyone. Hi, I'm Alanah. I'm joined by Austin Wintory, Troy Baker, and Mike Bithell, and I also prepared a background. Wait for it. Wait.
Oh yeah, you've been grinning.
Is
the
it
whole
Greg
time.
Miller? Is it the hologram of Greg Miller?
Hey.
Look
That's
at
the
it.
kind of. That's
Didn't even ask for
what,
permission.
that's what they call vertical integration right there. It's beautiful.
To be clear, Mike did not ask for this. Okay. He
No, I did
me
not
to
ask
put
for
the
this.
In
art
fact,
from
he
this game.
explicitly
Like Adam
forbade
Jensen, I definitely did not ask for this.
No.
But I like it. It's good.
Yeah.
Never
So,
asked for
how's that been? What's announcing
It's
a video
been-
game like?
That's a big question.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about it. No, it's good. It was a weird one. It was very strange in terms of we've not done it with an indie game since fucking Volume, I think. Like we've either been in a situation where we have a publisher who have been dealing with that, something like John Wick, where yes, obviously we're involved in the decision making, but ultimately it's all someone else's responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
the
That's
marketing's
kind of what a
an
publisher's for.
announcement
exactly.
specifically.
Yeah, the announcement. Yeah, like it's not you're not dealing with it, and then previously like the Circular games were like drop them. We Beyonce'd those. They just came out, which was fun. This was a bit more of a
Beyonce
kind
them.
of.
Yeah, I was like,
That was
Beyonce
it,
do
that was
Oh,
it.
she did do that. You're right.
I like that.
She did do that.
That's just now the way we.
That's a verb.
Yeah. That was what we were. That's what we always called it, like in house. Like when I was pitching the idea to the team of like, let's just not bother with marketing. That was the Beyonce was the prototype. But yeah, so it's been good. But it's been in 2020. It felt like we had to do more of a build up and a bit more of a hype. So that's what we've.
Why is
we've
that?
announced it
What do you
with
mean?
2
Like,
weeks.
just what
Why?
about 2020 puts that qualifier on it? Do you just feel there's just more competition for
more
awareness?
games, more competition for sure. I think basically, to be honest, it was it's mainly because I messaged someone at Valve and was like, so like that thing we do where we like release something out of the blue, that's okay still, and like got 5 paragraphs back. It's like, okay, maybe it's not. Maybe I should be a bit more considerate. So
Oh, really?
no, but well, just in terms of like, there's more games. Everyone's attention is being pulled in obviously lots of directions because of 2020 and everything going on.
Well, that's partly why I asked, because I said that when one invokes 2020,
there's a lot. Yeah,
it's not a celebration of the overwhelming number of great games, even though you could actually make that a 2020 sub headline.
Oh, and that's a good thing. Yeah, don't get me wrong. That's a really positive thing. But yeah, no, it just.
But you're
just-
competing with, like,
yeah.
a news cycle.
I don't know how many games it is on Steam right now. Sorry, I keep talking over you. I think there's a connection
Wait,
timing
so
thing.
are
But like,
there
yeah.
No worries, no
more
worries.
video games releasing in 2020 than normal, is what you're saying?
every year for the last like 3 years, 4
True.
years, 5 years, like Steam has been like just exponentially growing.
True.
Yeah. In terms of the number of games, I don't know what the current stats are, but like in terms of how many games are coming out every day, yeah, it's tricky. And there's only so many if you think about store.
Sorry. I thought the green light
okay.
program was supposed to prevent that. You know how I don't know how long ago that even
But you
was.
can self-publish, can't you?
I thought you had to get approved.
God, where's it
for
at
Steam
now?
I don't know.
No, now it's just like a basic.
Pretty
much
I'm
everything
assuming
gets
that
through
you're
now.
trying to get on Steam, Mike. What's the process for you to do that?
I mean, for me, getting on Steam is because I'm a I can't remember what the name in the system is, but like a legacy developer.
You're a
basically, 'cause
fancy developer.
We've been because like when Thomas Was Alone came out, that was a time where like you had your Valve contact, and that was the person, and you and that person brought the game to the store and did everything properly, and it was very bespoke. But because there was only like 2 games coming out a week back then, so because of that, like my process
Even
is
that
streamlined.
isn't that interesting though. Even just the notion of 2 games a week, even just
I mean, that's why
when you
Thomas
look-
Was Alone hit.
But it
Because
seems,
it was
even
the
that
only
seems
game
like
that
a
week.
lot. If you have like a naive outlook, even that feels like a lot. You know, like 2 games a week, and then it's so funny that I think I brought this up before, so forgive the redundancy. But I remember when Banner Saga 1 came out in 2014, they noted that there were 75 games released that month on Steam. And 2 years later, in 2016, when Banner Saga 2 came out, that number had reached like 400.
I mean, I know
the
it's
same
like
time of year,
thousands for sure, and I think.
And the App Store is like thousands a day or something.
Tons.
Completely,
This is
completely bonkers.
very lazy Google search, but it looks like it might be Steam Direct now for people who are not already established developers on Steam.
Yeah. So it's a good pipeline.
Yeah,
Basically,
Greenlight died in
you can-
2017. My bad.
Yeah, Greenlight died, but it's
Cutting
it's-
edge there, Alanah.
Yeah, I don't know how Steam works.
No, it's a pretty. It's like Steam Direct is pretty. I mean, it's direct. It's more akin to what you have on like the Apple Store, where it's a pretty much basically there's a lot of hoops to jump through, of course, and it's really tricky your first time, like to learn how all of that pipeline works. But ultimately, yes, anyone can get a game on Steam. And that's a good thing. Like to reiterate that, like that's a really good thing. But it does make it much more competitive. Like it means that I can't just kind of go, yeah, I'll just release a game and people will find it. It's like now, if I want that game to be visible to anyone on the store, I have to feed the algorithm and make it so that it's a game that's kind of perceived as popular enough to justify the algorithm. Because that's the thing with with any algorithm on any store. The goal of the algorithm is not. I mean, ultimately, the goal of the algorithm is to make as much money as it can from every user, right? Like that's the prevailing. It's a business, and the 2 ways it does that is it wants to show you what it thinks you want to see, and it wants to make as much money from hits as it can. And those 2 hopefully align in a lot of cases. So my job as a developer is to kind of make that algorithm sure that algorithm knows that people who like these kind of games are going to like my game. And B, to make sure that my game looks like a game that people like, and therefore it should be served to more players. Because so the way you do that is you essentially just make it so your page gets lots of attention and lots of traffic and lots of wish lists and all this kind of stuff. And that feeds the algorithm kind of the information that this is a good game that people are enjoying. And then from those people who are interacting with it, it can go, okay, so which people are enjoying this? Oh, it's people who already own this game, this game. So therefore I should suggest this game to people who like those games.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, so you're trying to look like a hit, but also you're then, as an additional thing to that, you're trying to
create a web.
The algorithm know who, it goes to awareness. And it puts you on store because ultimately there are only, if you look at like the Steam store, any store you go on, there's only so many slots, right? There's only so many places you can see a video game on any of these stores. On Steam, it's fully algorithmic with some exceptions, like in terms of those like full page takeovers. With other stores, they literally sell those spaces because they're so valuable, you know. So it's a mix of things.
What's your take on wish lists on Steam specifically as a kind of market force? Because I see a lot of
how many times have I mentioned wish lists on Twitter in the last 24 hours?
Yeah,
I've seen it. Even Greg tweeted about it. He was like, "You're really cool."
Even Greg's been awesome. Greg has been like super supportive. I mean, you know, he's kind of celebrating the game and stuff. He's been great.
He's a wrestler of a human. He's very good at being a hype man. He's so passionately
it's
behind
awesome.
the stuff he does. Yeah.
I actually like we don't tend to talk about DMs all the show, but I genuinely messaged him like, dude, thank you, but like you don't have to do all the. It's
Settle
like, no,
down.
it's my game as
No,
well.
I
I'm
think he enjoys
celebrating.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's really cool.
So
So
the context,
with
everyone,
Wishlist,
Greg is in Mike's game. Greg Miller.
sorry, Greg Miller is in the game, yes.
Yeah.
Which is called Solitaire Conspiracy.
Yes.
Wishlist it now. No, it's so wishlists are important for a couple of reasons. So wishlists, one, they're just a metric of success. So you're telling the platform holder, hey, people like this game and are waiting for this game. They're also though, so that's the obvious one. That's the one everyone would presume.
Just
that,
curious
like,
the
just having more
conversion
wish
rate,
lists makes
you know, because
so the average conversion rate is... this is one of those moments where I'm wondering if this is NDA'd information. There is a conversion rate that developers know. I'm not sure if I can't remember.
the
It's
number
on the Steam
exists.
back end. I don't know if
This
it's
is like
under NDA. So
quantum mechanics of game design. Like
But yeah,
there is
there's
an
a
answer,
really
but it's not
predictable number.
knowable.
There's a really predictable number in terms of
I
like
would
the
guess
number
it's
of wish
low.
lists.
I've had Anno
It's-
2070
Sorry, go on.
on my wish list for maybe
Which?
like 7 years, and I still get emails every time it's on sale, but still haven't bought it.
So it
For which
low,
game?
but it's higher
Anno
than you think it
2070.
is. Anno 2070.
It's higher than you think it is. Interesting.
Yeah, it's like people are predicting. I mean, this is the weird thing with any kind of, once you get into statistics, this is where it gets weird always, right? Is you realize how boringly predictable we all are ultimately in terms of like buying stuff. So there is a number, and it's known like among the developers. I just can't remember if it's like an NDA portion of the Valve backend.
Well, I mean,
But do you
I can Google it.
traffic? Do you trade off of that then? Like, do you kind of use
Yes,
that to
to an
broker a deal,
extent.
like with someone about something? Like, hey, we have 10,000
we have X
wish
wish
lists,
lists, so therefore
yeah,
there
like,
are 100% publishers who would want that information. I've never done it because I've never announced a game before going to a publisher, but I know other indie developers who've 100%. It's a metric. Basically, any success metric you can share is something you can kind of tout. You know, we have this many. Troy's mentioned it on the show before. Like pre-orders are AAA currency. Like if you know what your pre-orders are looking like, and if those pre-orders are looking good, then it changes everything in the AAA space in terms of what promotions you can get, what store support you can get, a million different things. But with the wish list, the other thing with it, the other two things, one is what Alanah just said, of like, Alanah's basically thinking about Anno 2077 once every
Forever.
couple of months because she's getting the email.
It's true.
She's not clicking on it, she's not buying it. That's cool. Statistically, there are lots of people who are responding to that email. Alanah, she's the normal, she's not the outlier. She's the standard. But there's enough outliers who will buy it that it's great. So there's that. So
I
cynically,
can,
anyone who wishlists my game gets marketed it over and over again, which is really great.
I
for
got
me.
the data. This is on a gamesindustry.biz article, but the data is provided by Valve themselves. So it says Steam wishlist actions of all wishes made prior to release. 13% of them will be converted during first week of release, meaning sales. 13%.
it's not bad.
Another 13% will be within 12 months. Another 3% will be after 12 months. 27% will remove from wishlist, and 44% will just leave it on their wishlist.
Which is
Alanah-
your Anno 2077.
Alanah,
So that's
part of the proud 44.
Yep.
By those numbers, that's what, 25% are acted on
It's
eventually.
19% of all wishlist ads convert to sales within 12 months.
Right.
And
then a few
20%
more after, right?
after that, yeah.
So that's significant. Like it's not the majority, but it's
extremely-
significant.
Yeah.
No, I mean
So
that's
we-
a hell
so-
of a lot
so we
better
can-
than a
yeah.
lot of other engagement metrics. Like if I if I put out a tweet that says, "Hey, I just released a new album," it's like you look at the metrics and it's always, this tweet had 10,000 impressions. Like it flew across this many feeds. Of that, 10% at most, like it. And then of that, 5% actually click the link. And then of that, 1% bought the album. It's like, it's just this
So
massive...
there is the same cutoff, right? So I still have to get you to wishlist it. And I know the numbers. So I know the numbers for yesterday of how many people...
Mike, I did not
Yeah.
wishlist. I'm going to do it live while
How
we're...
dare you. Do it now.
I'm gonna.
I know the stats though of yesterday. So when we're recording this, we announced it just over 24 hours ago. I know the stats of like how
password
many people.
invalid.
I know how many people kind of went to the page, roughly. I know how many people wishlisted. So there's a big drop off as you'd expect between those two numbers. But crucially, this is my point about kind of convincing the algorithm of the game's kind of popularity. Is all those numbers along the way matter? Those breadcrumbs, everything you do when you click on that link, that's a metric, like of people who've clicked that link. When you go to Steam and you search for the game, that's a metric because you've heard about it on a website and you make a little mental note to go and check it out. That's a metric. Every time you interact, and that's crucial. We've already seen that. This is deeply cynical, but like you guys could now, if you go onto Steam and do a search on the top bar for Solitaire, we're the top answer for the problem of Solitaire on the Steam store right now because we did so well yesterday.
I'm gonna test.
There's plenty
right
of
now.
Solitaire games on Steam. We're the best answer to the question of Solitaire right now.
You're the most Greg Millery version of Solitaire.
We're the most Militaristic.
That's
important. But one second, Austin, just quickly. What's interesting about that is that's a cool thing and that's useful for us and that helps us serve. But anyone who wants to check if I'm still correct when this podcast comes out or when you guys search it, by searching for Solitaire and getting that result and clicking on it, you're reinforcing to the algorithm that that's what you want. And that is in itself helping.
That's the correct answer.
These
that's
are
how YouTube
perpetuating
works.
loops. Exactly, right? It's all the same stuff you're doing in terms of running a successful YouTube channel. You're just feeding the algorithm the data it needs to consider you enough of a success that it makes you a success.
The problem with YouTube is it changes so much. Sorry, go ahead, Austin.
No, please.
I feel like you were trying to say something for a while there.
I'm queued up. Do
it. No, we want to hear it.
Well, two things. First off, just as a general observation, when I opened up my Steam homepage, based on recommendations of our illustrious audience, I played Spiritfarer. I have many thoughts on that game, very mixed thoughts on that game. But funny enough, greeting me, this is totally unrelated to what you're talking about, but it just is hilarious to me that it goes, because you played Spiritfarer, may we recommend Portal 2, which is also funny because I already own that. So I feel like Steam is still refining. Here's what's interesting. If I type Solitaire, like as I type S-O-L-T-A, okay, S-O-L-I-T gets me the Solitaire conspiracy. I keep going. A-I-R, still you. As soon as I put the E, you vanish, and it says Regency Solitaire, Shenzhen Solitaire, Jewel Match Solitaire, Fairy Solitaire. So the incorrect...
My users click early, Austin. They know.
Yeah, seriously.
But that's interesting, right? Because probably that's actually... And this shows how... I mean, these algorithms are not super smart. They're efficient and they get the job done. But like probably what that's telling you is the word Solitaire being searched in full, historically for the last...
It's old people looking for real Solitaire.
Has been those games, right? But the people who've gone on the website in the last 24 hours
it's
and
collectively
started
the people
typing Solitaire until they see our game and click, that's why that's being served. So it's still good for us. It's still good that you're seeing
the people who write the
that,
whole word are trying to browse which of the various Solitaire games they want to buy. The people who just
people have been doing that behavior for 10 years.
Forever. Yeah.
Rather than 24 hours.
In my mind, they all look like George's parents on Seinfeld. It's Jerry Stiller and what's her name? Those are the people typing Solitaire, hit enter, carefully perusing the options. They're not interested in Greg Miller, Command and Conquer.
Cyberpunk Greg Miller.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you for spotting the Command and Conquer of it all, by the way. I appreciate that comparison.
Well, ironically, that was also on the homepage. Command and Conquer Remastered held my attention before I Googled Solitaire and almost made me forget about you completely, because Midweek Madness has the remastered collection of Command and Conquer on sale 25% off. I'm just saying.
That's a good deal.
There you go.
But yes, you have now been officially wishlisted by my profile. So go on.
Or I'll just check the screen. Oh, yep, it's got that one.
There it is. Yep. Click +1.
Quick +1. It says Austin Wintry, intent to buy 0. That's what it says.
Yeah, exactly.
It says this user seems to think they'll get a key sent to them on release day and they're not going to buy it. It's an amazing system.
In fairness, I have every expectation of being sent a key before release day.
You will 100%.
I feel like that's not an entirely
currently
horrible
bug fixing. Once it's ready for press, of course.
Can I get a patch where Troy does a VO replacement of Greg's? So
you want Troy doing the whole?
We have Greg's body, but it's Troy's voice.
Which Saints Row was it? Where was it? Were you in a Saints Row, Troy, where it was an option? Was that you were? Weren't you? You could like select you on the menu, right?
No. It was Nolan. You could do Nolan.
What's the difference?
I was.
But you were in a Saints Row, right? I'm not.
I know. I was both. So Saints Row the Third, and then Saints Row 4, which is a funny story because Saints Row 4 was actually supposed to be DLC. And so they pitched this like crazy concept, like what if we just said fuck it and we did aliens and it was all of this stuff, and then they were like, well, that sounds like a THQ was, this is the last gasping breath of THQ. So like, what if we just double down on it and we just make it an actual standalone? They're like, oh no, you shouldn't do that at all. And so it kind of shipped in a weird state, but one of the Saints Row 4 is awesome. It is just off the rails, banana, batshit crazy. And it felt to me like the spiritual successor of like Vice City, like GTA, because it had like this.
Wasn't that the whole point of that franchise to like be the batshit response to
Well, before like Saints Row 1 and 2 were trying to be like the answer to they were the battlefield, if we're going to be the Call of Duty killer. And so they were like, we're going to be, you like GTA, well, we're more hardcore. And then Saints Row the Third, they got in new writers and they were like, how about we just become our own thing and we take the piss and just like make this a complete and almost parody of it. We are the,
were Saints Row 1 and 2 more earnest?
Yeah.
They were more grounded.
I never played those, so it makes me realize I just assumed they were always nuts.
They still
it's like musical theatre. It becomes more silly as it goes through the run.
Yeah, they were not as grounded as GTA, but way more grounded. And I think Saints Row 3, I'm pretty sure it was 3. It was one of my favorite video game trailers ever. It was Kanye West's Power, and it's like a nightclub or at the very least a party, and there's all this like these slow-mo effects. Like such a good trailer.
Saints Row the Third introduced the dubstep cannon, which was a gun you could fire at people that made the sound.
What was the one where you could turn into a toilet? I remember there was one where you could play as a toilet. That was 4.
Saints Row the 4.
The dubstep cannon is so Key and Peele.
And they actually made one. Yeah, dubstep cannon was great. And then there also was one of the first weapons you got was a giant purple dildo that you could beat people with.
Now that was iconic. That was more iconic than anything in Watch Dogs. That was an iconic weapon. That was good.
My selfishly, my intro to that whole world was on. I think it's 5, right? That's the Gat Out of Hell.
I think that's technically just 4 DLC, isn't it? Gat Out of Hell.
Yeah, they made 2. Get Out of Hell was
you're right.
music, right? And there was the musical.
That was my.
That wasn't even THQ. That was like Volition went on to go with like somebody else.
It was Deep Silver.
Was Deep Silver? You're right.
Deep Silver.
Because I got the call from Deep Silver for that because they said we're trying to figure out how to make a very Disney style musical for Saints Row, and
Alan Menken does.
We need someone who knows their way around that vibe. Are you interested in helping? And so that was funny because I didn't even know Travis at the time, and I got this vocals of him performing. Like they basically scratched out a melody, had him sing it, and had the other cast sing, but there was no track behind it. It was just like voices in a vacuum basically. And they were like, can we make this into like a super Disney style musical of Jezebel singing to her father Satan to let her out because she wants to like go on dates and stuff, and it was freaking just one of the best. I was like, I am so happy to be doing like this old fashioned Alan Menken Disney musical number of like Satan and his daughter,
I need to watch
Johnny Gat, and it's really funny. I didn't know what it was. It wasn't entirely clear. It ended up being, I think, the kind of announcement trailer for Gat Out of Hell. But it was awesome. We recorded that with the Brussels Philharmonic Orchestra. So it's like a big giant 80-piece, like full on. It was so, and it was like, what is this game? Like in my mind, I didn't realize how batshit those were because it was one of those that had been off my radar somehow. And
is it on Steam? It makes me want to go back and play it.
You know what's on Steam? You can wish list it. If you wish list.
It's
Troy,
actually the seventh answer.
You're in a musical video game or involved in it in some way, correct?
Me?
Yeah.
No,
course,
Troy.
Both
I believe
of
that's
us
been
are.
announced. It has. Oh, Austin, you are too. You both are.
Austin went
I'm like
Tori.
writing the music and stuff.
Well, I guess when I first spoke
Always
to
the
Liam
actors
about
that get
it,
the credit.
when I knew
Also,
Liam,
you should talk to Austin about this too. He has a little thing
so
to do.
it's
You're
Liam
directing Troy as well, right?
personal friend.
Yeah.
The game is Summerfall Games, and it's called Chorus, an adventure musical, and I guess it lists in collaboration with Austin Wintory, Troy Baker, and starring Laura Bailey.
Well, the title is still
set.
Whip, so we're still workshopping titles, but right now.
Well,
it's,
plus also there was this game that was announced called Chorus.
So,
Like
It was
like a space sim game that
Oh
seems
yeah,
like,
that's the
seems
one where
like-
the U looks like a V. It's next gen.
yes
Yep.
yeah they announced
Next Gen U.
yeah
it's been so our creative
Chorus.
director Liam Essler and the head of the company, and it has just been like he's the beautiful stage. I'm sure Mike, you understand this. That beautiful stage of dev where it's just like fucking just head against desk or wall.
exhaustion all the time.
It's just like, come on, because
Yeah.
we had this great
His hair.
momentum going into that hair, going into 2020, and then all of a sudden 2020, and then it's just like, man, okay, what are we supposed to do here? So it's just been this constant running the gauntlet of being an indie studio and producing a game that you're doing so far without a publisher, and it's exactly what we led off talking about. It's this navigating this new space, not only of being an indie dev functioning without the necessity really even of a publisher, but also without the support that comes along with that in the current environment of trying to ship a game under quarantine.
And especially because most of the developers are in Melbourne, which is in like not just quarantine, but it's like children of men down there.
Isolated and quarantined.
Melbourne currently has the strictest lockdown in the entire world.
Crazy.
Which
Yeah.
props to Australia for taking that stuff very seriously, but it is also really brutal. Like my grandma.
And it should be
real.
noted that they did that in response because they opened up because they had 2 cases a day. They were recording 2 cases a day, and they opened up and then went from 2 to 12 to 100. Like it multiplied exponentially, and then they shut it back down. So yeah, they
But it's still it's hilarious though because it's all relative. Like their peak numbers were
laughably low.
1% of
ours.
LA County. You know, I mean, it was like it was.
And oddly enough, an incredibly conservative city. Like it's not like this wildly liberal city.
Melbourne?
It's like
Melbourne?
Melbourne's isn't it like the San Francisco of
It's pretty
Australia?
fucking gay.
so. But talking to this is what I found interesting is that talking to Liam.
I mean, we're
thought
making
the
a
same
musical
thing.
there. I suppose we're
Yeah.
just fulfilling
Has
the
to be, right?
stereotype.
Excuse me, sir. Are you straight? We're making a musical, please. We'll be authentic. But from hearing from Liam, he was like, it still is rooted very much in conservatism, which is part of the problem of.
I guess he lives there. I would say so. The
I mean,
most
you can speak to it
conservative
better
part
than
of
I can.
Australia is sort of the outskirts of Sydney, and even then, it's still a very small amount. So it's possible that Melbourne is absolutely majority liberal, but it is entirely possible that it's like, but there's still more conservatives than you would expect.
Interesting.
Like that, I would say that's probably.
they are, it's not a 1-to-1 conversion of even what that means because my understanding, and this is where Alanah, I trust you to correct my inaccuracies with vigor. Free speech laws are really not the same there. I saw
We don't have any.
a viral. Yeah, okay. That matches with what.
What does that mean?
Well, I
does that-
saw a video that went viral. A friend of mine shared of a woman who was fed up with the lockdown in Victoria, I assume in Melbourne, who said she wrote on Facebook, "I want to organize a protest against mask regulations, against curfew, like kind of like we see in the U.S. Like fuck this is ridiculous." And police showed up to her house and arrested her from the Facebook post. and she was screaming. She's screaming in the video. Her husband is like filming from his cell phone the whole time, and she's screaming, "I'll take it down! I'll take it down!" And they're like, and I got the impression that the cops were not like, "Fuck you." It was kind of like, we have to do this. Like this, you know, this isn't like, our judgment call in this moment.
That's just like the reminder. To be clear,
it's exactly the same as Ryan. Yeah.
So I was gonna say, we want to remind you, this is the same country that spawned Mad Max. It's like every once in a while they pop their head up and like, we'll go crazy on you.
No, I mean, Australia is very heavily policed. The state that I'm from, they call the nanny state because we have so many laws. But it's also just like, this is super anecdotal, but I've never been pulled over or even spoken to a police officer since moving to the US. Whereas in Australia, it was very frequent. Like, I'd be pulled over maybe like once every 3 months. Just
in fairness, you were driving a Mad Max car with flaming. It was technically had some illegal modifications, but that's besides the point.
I just feel like I rarely see cops here. Like, you can't, drink in public, you can't smoke in public. I remember when I moved to San Francisco, and technically those things were illegal at the time, but everyone just did them anyway. So yeah, Australia is very heavily policed. No free speech laws. There are certainly still healthy amounts of protests, and they're very frequent, and the police will escort you if you tell them we're protesting here. They'll literally, barricade the streets and help you protest for any reason. But we don't have anything to protect free speech.
I really want to test that theory.
Just in the UK.
Like, they'll let you protest for anything?
I think so, yeah. I mean,
if there is that just common practice? Because here it's enshrined in law, like the right to protest, the right to gather, is a constitutional guarantee.
Freedom of assembly, freedom of speech.
Yeah, so it's like if it's one of those where it's heavily policed, but they will let you do it. Is it just one of those? Is it like generally a bro dude cop thing of like, as long as we're cool with you, we'll let you do it, but we don't actually have a legal obligation to let you do this at all.
At any moment, we can take your ass to jail.
I don't know, but I mean, I've seen many a protest, and police are on board, and it's, they can be for either political alignment. So it's like they're sensitive to it and try to be careful about it. Like I've seen.
But that's where I'm just curious. Is it
police have still been helping?
Is it like
I think America tends to, because America has such a specific kind of, such a broad kind of approach to free speech.
Yes,
most countries in the world don't have free speech laws.
I think America might be the only one.
I think exactly, and I think there's an assumption that you can't have protest without free speach laws is not necessarily true.
No, you absolutely can.
Because lots of countries have. We have. I've
but Mike, isn't there something you guys do every year, or something? There's like a recurring thing where basically the prime minister sits on the hot seat, and people just basically hurl insults. Like, you can say whatever. It's like an open forum hot seat. I remember like Tony Blair had to do this. This was.
You mean prime ministers? Do you mean prime minister's questions?
Is that what it is?
That's every week. Where they go in our House of Parliament, and they will, and the other MPs can ask any questions they want. Is that what you mean?
I thought it was more just like it was the intent of it was to berate. It was like, you're doing a shit.
No, it's just how we do it. No, there's a thing.
Who's the guy that I love that is?
Go on.
Who's the guy that's at the House of Commons? I can't remember his name, but he's not the prime minister, but he's obviously, but he is. He's almost become like he's a meme. He's so like
order that guy.
Yes.
Oh, what's his name? Everyone's going to type it in the thing. Well, he's no longer there. He retired.
Right. But he was like the antithetical to Mitch McConnell. But anyway.
He is basically there to lead and organize the House. That's his job, is basically to bring order to the House, yeah.
But he did it with such panache and pizzazz. It was so great.
Well, they have to, because our parliament is very rowdy.
Because it's people. But the thing that we have freedom of speech.
Isn't that funny, though? Like how rowdy. If you watch C-SPAN, our procedural kind of government in action seems far more stereotypically British, whereas like insofar as there's a politeness, there's a decorum that is
you have an unhealthy
based
respect
upon
for
parliamentary law.
You have an unhealthy respect for politicians.
I agree.
Agree.
There's an interesting. I don't know if I agree with this. I'm a, and I need to say this very carefully. I'm a lowercase r Republican in that I'm not pro the idea of kings and queens. I don't like the idea. I like the idea of.
You believe in a republic, not a senate.
I believe in a republic. I'm not an American Republican.
What kind of government do you have? What is your literal kind of government?
We technically don't even have a
Constitutional
democracy
monarchy,
in the UK.
Well, we don't
Yeah,
either.
it's a monarchy.
We're a constitutional monarchy.
Yeah, so we're the same. I mean, ultimately, and we share.
No, we're not a constitutional monarchy.
The we was Australia.
She means
Australia
Australia.
was like, what the fuck are you talking
You're like,
about?
America's
no,
a
I see
democratic
that.
republic?
Country.
I saw Hamilton. I know how it went down. We don't technically have a democracy. We have essentially a dictatorship.
I mean,
but my point is,
very,
the
very
thing that
few
I think is an
countries
interesting point. Yeah, the thing that I think is a really interesting point is there's an argument that the reason the British have such rowdy government is because we have a head of state who's not elected, who we can, festoon honor on and love on, and the Queen is great, and we'll put her on stamps, and we all love the Queen. That's not the case at all, but there's a national pride in a figure, whereas in America, you have to tie your identity much more to a leader who is a politician in that moment. It's the idea of like, we have kind of this ultimately, technically, politically, absolutely incapable person who we say is the leader, but doesn't actually wield much power except for in a figurative, which is too much in my opinion, but a figurative power. So we can do that, and we can hold that person as a special person or whatever, but then we have zero respect for our prime ministers because we don't need to, because they'll be gone in a few years. There's a healthy level of disrespect.
God,
I still prefer your
There's a
system.
disposable mentality.
There's a disposability to our politicians, which I think is healthier.
What's to go back to the freedom of speech thing, though, specifically within our country, that only extends so far, because what you can't do is in any way make a passive or tacit threat against the president.
Isn't there? Oh, it's against the president. Okay.
You will have Secret Service show up to your house and arrest you. If
You can't threaten anyone, can you?
Sure, you can threaten whoever you want. You
Well,
can
there's
say,
a difference.
Is that true?
No, there's a fine line there. I've been
I
actually
can
reading
say,
about this.
Austin, I'm going to kick your ass. There's nothing.
But you can't you can't go into the public square and say, I'm going to murder Austin Winfrey without expecting some kind of...
Yeah, right?
Yes, but the difference is...
Which arguably is what that Australian woman organising a maskless protest was doing to a lot of people.
Well, yeah, I get why they would have arrested her, is that she's breaking the rules that the whole region is trying so hard to fix.
But if you announce that you're going to commit a crime, that's different. That's the same thing as like, I'm going to go rob a bank. A cop's going to come talk to you. But if I in any way imply any threat whatsoever towards a United States president, and I'm being very, very careful about how I say this, because I remember on Dallas radio, one of the DJs because Dallas is like number 3. I mean, sometimes it goes back and forth, but it was between number 3 and number 5 market in the entire country. So it was a large market. And morning drive time host, at that point, George Bush was he was a candidate. I don't think he was a president then. He made a joke about, I think it was a Kennedy joke. He's like, well, if he's coming through Dallas, why doesn't he just swing through Dealey Plaza or something like that?
Wow.
Secret Service showed up.
Yeah, don't doubt it.
And he was off the air and had to he was like, yo, guys, I was just kidding. And they had to literally take that out of the tape. And it was a big deal.
It's the one thing that gets you the death penalty in the UK is treason. That's the one on the books. It's not been utilized, I think, for like
what would constitute treason? Like a verbal
killing
thing?
the Queen.
Sure, but you can say that you're gonna do that, but you can't actually.
You just can't do it.
I wouldn't try it. I wouldn't try it. I wouldn't try it. But no, I
almost
think,
all over the screen. For those who are not watching, coffee almost all over the screen.
So just take
that
away
was the most
on
British
Mike's
I've
moral
heard Mike
compass.
Smith in a long time. I wouldn't try it.
It's a pass. It's a pass.
I wouldn't try it.
Yeah, one out of 5 on Mike's Yelp of king or queen killing.
Don't recommend it. No, we
Is
also
anybody still
have
following
hardcore-
along at home? By the way,
to
what
be
we're talking,
clear-
we talked about Mike launching a game.
I want to
Yeah.
circle back to that. But to
Same.
be clear,
Dildo
I
and
do
dubstep
think-
cannons and constitutional monarchy.
it's been a journey. Constitutional
I think,
monarchy. We've covered it all. We've covered it all, as we always do.
as an obvious non-constitutional lawyer, But as someone who is fascinated by this and watches an unhealthy amount of, I know, I hate to break it to you.
He could be if he wanted to be, couldn't he? He could be if he wanted to be.
He could.
You've been charging me though.
You promised me.
Go ahead, Austin. Sorry.
That's I think explicit calls to violence are where the line is most easily drawn. Mm-hmm. So if you try to rally people to, like go attack someone or go rob a bank or whatever.
Inciting a riot is against the law.
That's what I'm saying. That does constitute. That's why when people talk about
you have hate speech laws as well, presumably. Against
we do that, but that's always a contentious. That's an extremely fraught subject because the definition of hate speech is basically completely unclear.
It's flawed because we're humans.
But you know what else has kings and queens? Solitaire
conspiracy. I was gonna do it.
Solitaire.
You beat me to it. I was like, it's almost like it's one person. It's almost like there's a conspiracy. It's like a solitaire.
Yeah.
Basically, what I'm saying is Greg Miller 2020.
Basically, wishlist solitaire conspiracy.
Yeah.
Actually, can I ask a question that was?
I'm putting that. I'm taking that audio clip of Troy and using it without permission on the next trailer. That's very good.
One thing that when we were kind of offline chatting a bit about this, but something that I genuinely don't know the answer to that I've always heard a little bit of reference to as my fly on the wall on various games that I've been part of.
Stop talking, Mike.
Yeah, he's adjusting. He's tuning me out, I think.
I am.
He's like, I'm getting some static on the line.
The Queen's just walked in, so I have to do whatever she says.
Yeah. I wouldn't have had to do that for what it's worth, so don't be jealous.
No, you wouldn't. Your forefathers died for the.
I watched your show.
That's right. We fought a war.
Yeah.
I love the ownership of that. Especially in my case, since every single one of my ancestors were here long after the Revolutionary War. Like I have absolutely no American heritage that goes as far back to the founding of this country. So the idea of like, we showed you, damn Brits. Anyway, so the question that I was going to ask is, I think actually it was Alanah that you kind of floated this as a thing to think about that I realized I don't really know the answer to is when picking a release date and also the window between announcement and release. You kind of got into that a little bit with the whole Beyonce-ing thing, but like there's all these conceptions or there's these broad notions that like, oh, you don't want to release in this window because that's when all the AAAs are coming out, and you don't want to release at Christmas because you're competing with this and it like is that true, or is that just one of those kind of things that, because it seems like there's such a steady supply of things all the time that there being genuine kind of blackout windows might be a kind of aphorism that isn't actually supported by data. Can you just wisen me a little here on this front?
No, I think it's a weird one because the problem with reality is you can't A/B test it, so you can never go, okay, would our game have sold twice as well if we'd released it a week later? Because you only ever do it once, right? Especially with our side of things, with like, I used to work on like Facebook games back in the day. Those you could A/B test because you could like secretly release two versions of the games to different markets or whatever, and you could really test this stuff. But no, basically it does seem like that stuff is worth considering in terms of release schedules. So the big one is interest from the audience and opportunity to sell to them. So interest from the audience is like, when have people got money in their pockets? Generally, people have money in their pockets in the summer. They don't tend to have as much money in their pockets towards Christmas because they're buying gifts for people and traveling and doing whatever. And also, they don't tend to have money for like 2 or 3 weeks after they've spent it on someone else's game. So that's important to kind of try and avoid those moments, maybe. But
that very last point would only apply to very specific. Like, you're not going to want to release 2
like
days
your
after
3
Cyberpunk.
games a year. So like, Cyberpunk is one. There's a reason every game is stepping back from Cyberpunk massively. It's because everyone assumes that that's going to get bought. The other one though, and I think possibly the more important one, is the opportunity to find that audience. The kind of that you're looking for that space where no one else is. You want to be the only game in town, and that's obviously impossible because of all the games coming out. but you want to be as close to that as you can be. And I think that often trumps everything else. So we've always kind of tried to be really clever with when we release games, when we announce games, so that we are avoiding other people's stuff. We're always trying to find that gap where, because there's always going to be these weeks, and they do pop up every now and again throughout the year where you're like, nothing's coming out, or
there's only 700 games this week.
Yeah.
But even if that's not true, right? There are those weeks where it feels like a quiet week, right? There's 4 people who are massively engaged with like games news and game releases and stuff. There are those moments, those patches where nothing's coming out. The other thing is where nothing's coming out maybe on your system. Switch was really interesting at launch because Switch had nothing. So a lot of indies did enormously well for like the first 3 or 4 months on Switch.
Yeah.
Even re-releases, because anything was selling on Switch. And then, of course, what happened was everyone went, well, Switch games sell really well, so we all flooded Switch, and then that did less well after that. So the people who were there first did really well. We had similar with PC. I've always said, like, basically, one of our ongoing tactics is to pay attention to what EA declares dead. As a general rule, if EA says single-player games are dead, by God, we're going to go and make a single-player game. If EA says that like multiplayer is dead, we're going to go make a multiplayer. Because what happens with
why EA specifically?
Well, honestly, I'm using them as an example, but like any AAA company, the EA often do it. EA will often kind of declare something is not the future because the AAA companies tend to move with each other. This happened. Thomas Was Alone. You can track the wave of indie, the kind of those first wave indies of like Super Meat Boy, Binding of Isaac. Came later, but yeah, and then Thomas Was Alone a little bit later,
Bastion.
and still those Bastion, that era of indie absolutely and where it did very well on PC, those games all did very well on PC, coincides with all of AAA giving up on PC. PC is dead was the cliche for like a couple of years. So they all left, they went to console, and they left this massively fertile ground where there was still all these players who wanted games, but now there wasn't the big AAA releases. So those first few kind of pioneering devs, and this is a cycle, this has happened many times, these weren't the first indies, but there was that group of indies who brought those games out, did well. We saw the same thing on Switch. The best bit of advice I try and give indies who are starting out is find somewhere where nobody is, either because there's not enough games or also genres, like we look at what games are out and which genres are popular, and which games are selling within those genres.
Like Solitaire was like, it was the summer of
we
could talk about was Solitaire.
We looked at Solitaire.
Said,
genuinely.
We heard him say it. He was in his
Solitaire.
business.
He said Solitaire is dead.
He was like, we have decided that Solitaire is dead.
Yeah,
to an extent we did.
Actually, you know what?
Saying, you're making a joke, but we did it. I started playing with. So Solitaire Conspiracy literally started because I was like, I've never made a card game. I'm just going to start prototyping a card game.
Well, here
so
I can prove to you.
Logic.
I can prove to you Solitaire did die this year because, the only time I ever play Solitaire is on fucking planes. And so I'm probably not alone. So probably there was a giant drop off in people's Solitaire consumption.
But genuinely, we did look at that genre. Sorry, just 1 second, Troy. We did look at that genre and we did see there are Solitaire games, some really good Solitaire games. Jake Burkett, a mate of mine, makes some really good ones, including Regency Solitaire, which we mentioned earlier. Like, there are these really good Solitaire games, but we definitely looked at that space and went, these are kind of maybe aiming at more of an older audience, maybe leaning more, in a lot of cases, fantasy and kind of going in that direction. There's nothing kind of, if you're a sci-fi nerd, there's no sci-fi Solitaire game.
No
and
sci-fi
that seems
Solitaire,
like there's enough players on, if you look at how successful sci-fi strategy games are on Steam, there seems like there's a niche here that's not being and that's what we saw yesterday when we announced, was we saw lots of people like getting into it and saying, why is this not already been done? And that's the reaction you always want, is like that this is fertile ground for a game, so we can come out and we can jump into that space and do something interesting, is the plan.
Would you say then, by and large, you're saying to people the advice you would give to people in the indie space is to go somewhere where no one has gone before? Is it almost like prospecting? It almost feels like real estate. You want to, either build on land that has yet to be developed, or you want to find kind of that real estate kind of moves in that 5 to 7 year cycles. Like, I understand that this doesn't look like a good opportunity right now, but if you look down the road, this thing's going to turn over, so get in now. So is it for indie developers, is it like, look, you're not going to be able to compete in the first-person shooter space, so don't make a first-person shooter. You're not going to be able to compete in the third-person action adventure, so don't really do that. What you want to do is what previously was a proven genre that has since been abandoned, or can you be so cutting edge that no one has ever done this before? Is that kind of the two poles?
That
it's
was
being different. Sorry, go on, Austin.
Well, I was just going to just quickly that what you just described, one of those two was essentially Jack Attrich's thesis for Erica. Like FMVs
were
is dead.
Right? Like,
and I think, and his conclusion was part of the
Greg
reason.
Miller's the one that can also bring it back.
and obviously Sam Barlow.
Sam Barlow sent me a message yesterday, like, Mike. I'm like, no, I'm not coming for you. It's all good. We're all good.
It's also marketability.
I think
Fez, I think, is such a good example of when you're an indie, you have to be able to share the concept of what your game is as quickly and succinctly as possible. And it should be visible what it is and how you play it in a screenshot, in a tweet. And I think that Fez is such a good example of that a large part of the success of Fez was that you could watch 2 minutes of gameplay and understand entirely what that game was and why you wanted to play it.
And that you'd never played it before.
Yeah.
You never played it before.
I want to know what Mike has to say. Because I was curious from just like an indie game. It was his quote that I was questioning. So what would you say? You were saying that was your advice. Yeah. So I'm curious.
No, Troy.
Yeah. The where to go. So I think yes to what you're saying, but like there's definitely no wrong answer. Like it's not don't do this. It's more just try and find that weird space. Basically, try and find the opportunity where no one is. Or the other one that really seems to work, and this one's harder to spot, is where someone has recently really messed it up. So I don't want to lay into EA twice in one episode, but like Sim City, right? And then City Skylines. And the way that played out, there was a Sim City game. People love Sim City. The game came out, it had loads of problems. I don't know if you guys remember this. There were network problems, AI problems.
Yeah.
Did not function on
launch. They gave it a 0.
Not ready. Yeah. And City Skylines came in and went, there's Sim City. And I think the developers would be the first to say, like with the first version of City Skylines, that was all it was. Like it was Sim City done well. And they came out, I think, a few months after the Sim City that was not fit for purpose.
But that also means that they
absolutely took over.
But that also means they got lucky. Like
right.
They got really lucky. Yeah, there was no planning involved there.
It wasn't like, quick, in terms of dev a game in 2 months, whatever.
But which EA failed after years and millions of dollars.
But they still made choices around launch, and if that's the question of kind of when do you release your game and how do you release your game, they 100% would have been. So they probably, my assumption would be that they knew SimCity was coming out. They as a development team went, okay, we wouldn't release the same week as SimCity, so we'll make our development and we're going to come out months later. And then when SimCity came out and had all those problems, I bet that dev team and their publisher looked at what was happening with SimCity and went, okay, we are now, whether we like it or not, the reaction to this. How do we frame ourselves and how do we so they probably made choices in terms of their marketing, in terms of how they brought the game out to actively, no one wants to like knock another developer, really. That's not professional. It's not the right way to be. So they weren't putting out trailers saying SimCity sucks, but they absolutely would have been going, okay, so the things people don't like about SimCity, if we're doing them well, let's talk about those things and discuss. And they kind of fill that space. But I think, yeah, it's what Alanah says. It's being unique and standing out is obviously massively important. Being direct, the reason the game is called the Solitaire Conspiracy is so that there's not much ambiguity of what the game actually is. Like we know with that genre, with that audience, we're not going to call it the predicament of one of my pretentious game names. We're not going to call it that. We're going to call it something
Solitaire Circular
Subsurface Conspiracy.
You have to get it exactly. You have to get
Alanah,
it.
Did you say that you gave SimCity a 0?
Yeah, and then re-reviewed it. So on launch, I gave it a 0 because it literally didn't function. You couldn't do anything. Some of the menus even crashed. It was unplayable. Fun fact, Anno 2077, in case you didn't know, also a city building game. Still on my wish list.
There you go. Statistically, you're likely to buy it eventually.
I'm talking about it now, so yeah, maybe that helps. I did also want to bring up, I made a no-clip doc. For anyone who doesn't know, it's Danny O'Dwyer, who left GameSpot, started that. Has a YouTube channel, documentary series about video games, and I made one for Dream Daddy, which sure had the backing of being associated with the Game Grumps, but also that title with the art, and then also they had a like short version that was like dating dad something something something. Like they just made it so social media marketable that you see again one screenshot and you know exactly what it is 100%. You know the vibe, like the art style. It was talking to them about it. That was like a big part of their strategy was, and I guess that's especially coming from content creation side. It was largely led by Vernon Shaw, who's done production for Game Grumps for a long time. Comes from how do we make sure we can market this thing as quickly as possible on social media, and then a game kind of evolves from there rather than the other way around. And I think that's the biggest thing, like of all of the indies that I've spoken to, is make sure if you want me to notice your game as press that I understand what it is immediately. Try not to say Zelda-like or Dark Souls-like, because everyone does that. You can't give me an email that's like, this game is like Dark Souls, because I will always be like, sure, they all are. What else can you give me about it? So I understand marketing indies is really hard, but I think the biggest thing has always been
we notice new things. We notice things that change the pattern. As you know, when you're walking through a store, you're not going to notice the item that's been there the whole time. You're going to notice the thing that's noteworthy and attention-seeking and different.
Or just
and
clear.
It's our job. Like literally, just the key art that's behind Alanah. We specifically sat down and went, okay. Like we literally were just scrolling through Steam and going, what do Solitaire games generally like, and what do other games? And we noticed, no one's doing that kind of super brightened, vivid color look in that space. So if we do that art style, it will probably catch your eye as you're scrolling through. You have these conversations. Everything is just about attention seeking and getting that spotted.
But do you also feel that the sorry, go ahead.
It's just a little comment that when you were talking about don't say Dark Soulsy and blah blah blah, one of my favorite examples of this was working with Andy Schatz on Monaco, where he well actually he's had two really good ones, because Monaco he kept saying it's Hitman meets Pac-Man, which was a great way to kind of
good tagline.
Like explain the game in a sentence, and then again on his RTS that we did called Tooth and Tail, he said, I want to be, I think the way he described it was, this is the Mario Kart. It's Mario Kart meets StarCraft. Because the idea was Mario Kart is not GTA, right? Or not Gran Turismo. Like Mario Kart is meant to be instantly understandable and playable, and you can get really good at it, but you can also suck and have a good time. But StarCraft, the RTS genre in general, is considered high barrier to entry. So he was like, I want to make an RTS that you can sit down and play, and you don't have to understand. You don't have to be this hardcore competitive esports player, blah, blah, blah. Like you can just, and so to me, the Mario Kart of like Mario Kart meets StarCraft was a freaking awesome way to say it's this plus this, but it's actually neither of those things. And that's
and that's the challenge. That's really the really
hard.
difficult thing from like a consumer facing point. So I think that's great among developers. I've always struggled with that approach when talking to the players, because the problem, I think the way developers think about games is fundamentally different, in that we're thinking about the systems underneath the surface, whereas I think players are thinking about the game they've played, which is utterly fair enough. So I've run into trouble before, and this is one thing we have with Subsurface Circular is the biggest problem we have with Subsurface Circular. One of the reasons we ended up doing the Beyonce release was a screenshot of Subsurface Circular looks like one scene from a much bigger RPG. Like it looks like a dialogue system within a bigger game. So we knew that if we compared it, because essentially Subsurface Circular is, hey, you remember that really fun dialogue-driven mission in Mass Effect? We made a game of that. We could never say that in press, because the second you invoke Mass Effect, there's a million other systems.
Brought all this baggage to the table.
People think of RPG. People think of crew and multiple characters and blah, 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 blah.
Mining for fucking resources, scanning probes.
And
that was what was missing from Subsurface Circular.
And even in your analogy, what Mario Kart means to every individual who's played Mario Kart is going to be different. Like what they think you mean when you invoke Mario Kart is going to be different, and that's so. True. It's always risky to do the comparison. We stopped doing it because we were just like, this is just causing us way too many problems.
Well, and that's and to why be fair,
a lot of the time you present,
you're just incomparable. But that's what it.
We're just special. We're unique.
But by the same token,
we're not like other games.
Would you not say that by the same token, like being the person? I always knew this was the same thing, like with music. Someone ever go, what does your band sound like? You're like, I don't know, man. We're just a really new thing. Like, fuck off. What do you sound like? Like, I want to know. Give me some framework, because we're all emulating our own
we all stand on the shoulders of giants.
Sure. And it, like you're inspired by something, right? Even if that was like being able to look at a genre and a space and going, no one's occupying this current space. I bet we can do something really cool here. So I'm going to put my own aesthetic and my own life experiences and imbue this new project with that. So I don't think to be able to go is like, this is like Dark Souls is necessarily a bad thing. Or it's like Zelda. I think that you have to be able to, I always appreciate someone going, okay, what if you did this, but you did this with it? Like, to me, it's like, okay, now I'm instantly in the same, you have found a way to make that relatable and resonant with me.
Well, that's where the information-rich like aspect of promoting a game in 2020 comes in, is like, that's what your trailer's doing. That's what your copy's doing.
Yeah, and for the record, I love games that are like Dark Souls and like Zelda. Like, I love that. The issue is just with indie marketing. They keep saying the same shit.
But the trailer can convey that. Like, with Dark Souls, the one that I love is I feel like the easiest way any game, and you see the AAA games that have kind of taken some things from Dark Souls have all done this in their trailers. The easiest way for you to convey to the player who likes Dark Souls that this game might be for them is to put a camera lock on the character and like the little white dot on the enemy, the kind of that indicator that happens in Dark Souls, and with the camera rotating around. I've seen that trick done in every successful AAA kind of trailer for that genre of game, because that just subliminally, Alanah's watching that and she goes, "Oh, Dark Souls, I get that." And
so
you don't say it explicitly. Well, no, but you can hint and you can kind of pull those references, and I think that's better because at least that's more direct. It's not, hey, this is like Dark Souls, which could mean 100 different things. It's showing that, so you do choose what you show. You do choose, with the trailer, again, I'm sorry I keep coming back to this game because this is what I've been thinking about for the last 2 months, but like with the trailer for Solitaire Conspiracy, it deliberately starts with the most, literally in the notes for the trailer when we were putting it together, it said, show boring Solitaire for about 10 seconds. And the trailer kind of starts off with this kind of very slow pace. This is Solitaire like you know what it is, because we need everyone in the audience to remember Solitaire and how it's kind of boring and what it is. And then on top of that, we then show all the stuff we've done on top.
So here's a question for you.
But you still choose to signal that information. If I just said, it's like Solitaire from Windows 95, again, means a million different things to different people. But I can show you the bits of my game that will rub that bit of your brain that remembers how much you liked that other thing.
Genius.
Well, so here's a question about that then, because the devil's advocate.
Sorry, Troy, did you just say "so genius" after I finished speaking? Because I liked that.
You can put that on the box art.
Yeah,
this is great.
I learned so much, and it's one of the things I love about these conversations, that I'm able to like go, oh, I never thought about it in that way, and certain things I've always kind of just taken for granted that they just kind of happen. You're like, no, there's always in some way there's code behind everything that happens. So.
And you better believe that like the average kind of AAA trailer has like 10 times the consideration I'm talking about, right? Like we're just chumps making this in our living rooms. Like this, the big stuff has teams.
So was Apple computers, man. That shit was made in a garage.
Marketing is literally manipulation. So it is trying to figure out how to get people to think of certain things.
Arguably, so is game design. Yeah.
That's true, actually. Sorry, Austin, you were going to ask a question.
Yeah, just quickly, the kind of devil's advocate to the way you're describing, we want to start off with boring Solitaire is, do you also then think, are we, like for the Hearthstone player that would see that and instantly reject our game because of that, but might otherwise like it?
See, I made that comparison just looking at that. I was like, okay, I got it. I understand. This is gonna appeal to like the Hearthstone players. That's what I thought when I saw the trailer.
So this is where it gets interesting. In the modern algorithmically driven thing, if you're the player who sees, and I say boring Solitaire, hopefully everyone who goes and sees the trailer is going to see it's very good looking.
I'm showing it on screen right now.
Oh, cool.
Very attractive.
So that section I'm calling boring Solitaire, that kind of 5 to 10 seconds at the start where it's just showing a regular Solitaire game. If you're someone who sees that and goes,
let me go back to that bit.
That's not for me. I don't want you on the page. Because from the moment you decide not to buy this game, you become risky to me. Because you are someone, well, first of all,
because I might hate it and go start talking shit about you.
So I feel like I'm just spewing secrets after secrets. Subsurface Circular, right?
I was going to say, tell me, I'm ready to release my own Solitaire.
Yeah.
So Subsurface Circular, if people go to the Steam page for that, again, all of this is helping my metrics, so thank you very much anyone who actually does this. If you go to the Steam page for Subsurface Circular, Subsurface Circular's copy is actively trying to dissuade you from buying the game. Every single line in that is saying, trust me, it's not for you. Like, it's saying it's a text adventure. It's very short. It's this, it's that. We are basically self-deprecating to the extent where we're actively trying to get rid of any player who's not going to be into that. And that's a conscious decision, because one of the most bad things for developers is negative Steam reviews, because those are very visible on the store, right? If a game's got a bad ratio on that review column on the right, it shows up to the player very quickly. And I think most users, myself included, that's the first thing.
If a game says, even if a game says mostly positive,
you're like, this is rubbish.
I'm immediately like, there are enough people that hate it that it will drag down.
So how do I solve that? And if you look at Subsurface Circular, I think it has like a 96% approval rating in that category. Please, no one go and be mean about it. But it's, fine.
Well,
we actively want the player who's not going to enjoy the game we made to never buy it.
Right.
Because once they buy it and are disappointed by it, that's just negativity.
And is that specific to
that's going to get us bad reviews.
And is that an indie strategy? Because I feel
that's definitely an us strategy. That's not something I think.
No, it's not viable for a lot of people.
We're very lucky in that we get enough eyeballs that we can be selective about audience in that way.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I think it's better for everyone. I don't want to sell someone a game they don't enjoy. I'd much rather, if you're someone who's not going to enjoy my game, I don't want your money. I want you to go and spend your money on other indie games that you enjoy.
I think everybody feels that way in some.
But also, I don't want your metrics. I don't want you to be leaving negative reviews. So I will shake your hand and ask you to come back and play the next game if you like it. Like, it's a respectful thing, but it's also like, it's in my best interest to be honest, which is good. That's a good thing about Steam is, it is a system that incentivizes me as a developer to correctly sell my game to you, which is a really good thing.
I never really thought about that way. I mean, it's funny because I have given the exact advice that you're describing when, like, composers earlier in their career, or if I'm giving a talk to a bunch of composers like at GDC, and there's always that kind of, if you had one piece of advice, just a single takeaway for someone who's just getting rolling, I always essentially say what you just said, which is, I encourage you to be divisive and announce very unapologetically, this is who I am, so that a would-be developer, a would-be filmmaker, a would-be producer, collaborator can know immediately, really certainly, I will not get along with that person. I'm not interested in hiring them, or I fucking love that person, and leave as little middle ground as possible for you to be like this milquetoast name that ends up on a list, but then we found someone else, so we'll maybe call you next. Like, the more you can really unabashedly be you, you will push people away, but you will also draw people in. And if your whole fear is just, I just don't want to avoid pushing people away, you're never going to draw people in. That you have to be willing to accept both.
It's a risky play, though, right? It's a risky play.
Like, it's a risky play.
And that's something I need to say in the context of like how we sell games.
I don't want anyone to take this as gospel.
But I want to be really clear, because all the stuff I'm saying is like from a position of like, I have a couple of very successful games. I have lots of people from the press who follow me on Twitter. Like, I have a level of access that allows me to pull off these things.
Yeah.
I just want to be really honest with any indies who are watching.
But
this is not necessarily directly applicable. What you should take is the intent.
But someone who doesn't have what you have, everything that you just, those privileges that you have earned, I'll add, there's no question that what you just said is true. Like, people follow you, the press knows about you. There are players who've played all your games. But that said, I wouldn't say that the answer to Mike Bithell circa 2010 is everything I'm saying about taking risk only applies to Mike Bithell 2020.
No. What Mike Bithell circa 20,
you should still be bold.
We should be risky, but what Mike from 2010 should be taking from if he was watching this, which maybe explains how he did okay. Like, maybe he is. Maybe this is what's that episode of Voyager where someone like steals a computer from the future. Anyway, but like it's the intent. So I have opportunities because of how my games have done and because the press likes me or whatever. But like, the intention behind what I'm saying is the stuff that I think is learnable and teachable, which is find somewhere people aren't, find opportunities that other people aren't taking advantage of. Basically, honesty is always the best policy in terms of selling anything to anyone. in terms of long term, it's definitely a very good policy if you want to have a career and stick around and not burn bridges. Honesty's the way to go. I think those things are useful and learnable. But yes, the manner in which I follow those intents is yes, the doors are closed on some of that stuff to other people. But I think that's the trick. And I just basically, this is reactive to, I see a lot of indies who are like, I did this thing, everyone should do this thing, and then we'll all be millionaires. It's like, no, that's not how this industry works. We all know that.
If I may, Mike, I feel like there's a difference between being risky and being cavalier. So I think you always have to be risky, and you can't lose what you don't put in the middle, right? So you can't gain what you don't put in the middle. So the notion of is like, I remember the first job that I ever had, and I think I've talked about this before, the actor that I was talking to, I said, at what point in your career do you go stop? Because you're implying that at some point you will have arrived, you will make it, and you never will. If you believe in something, you ask for it from the very beginning. And he goes, you just better make sure that it's something that you really believe in. And I think that's what you're talking about. It's, yes, you have had success, and that has garnered you some other things, which allows your risk factor to move from here now to here. But you're never going to be cavalier that's going to put, especially knowing you're never going to put your studio or your employees at risk due to your being risky or being cavalier. You're never going to put that in jeopardy.
The risk scales, the risk-taking scale. So, for example, that's another great thing about this thing we do where we have these shorts, which is the circular games and this, and then we have what we call like our main games, which are like John Wick and other stuff. Like, there's definitely
I can't wait for other stuff too, by the way. Other stuff is one of my favorites.
I will wish list other
it's
stuff.
It's my best game. If you type in other stuff on Steam, it's like the third thing that comes up.
Other stuff too, though.
Now I really
other
want
stuff
to know.
too. I feel like we dropped the ball on other stuff too.
He's going to come back
like
and do
the
other
shorts,
stuff infinite.
The reason the shorts can be so risky is because they're very, like, bluntly, they're cheap. Like, we make them quickly. So Solitaire is like 5 months development cycle. So, and with only kind of 3 core full-time team members on it, me, the artist, and the composer. So it's kind of, there's these, we take risks with the stuff we can afford to take risks on.
You can be avant-garde on that one.
Yeah, and then with the stuff where, 10 jobs are on the line, that's where we're a bit more careful.
For the record,
the
other
rest of your
stuff.
studio, right?
If you search other stuff on Steam, you get literally 0 results. So I'm just saying, go where there's no one. You can give us.
A lot of
you
results
can give
for
us.
Solitaire.
You can
This
give
is
us
when
our
Alanah
10%
starts to
rating.
rein us in.
I've been like in the middle
grown-up
of
is in the
like
room.
sort of a text work meeting this whole time. Like,
By the way, has anybody else been
So
following
riveted.
the brilliance of what's been going on with this TED Prize picture?
what?
What's this?
It's just Lucy James started it, and then like Tamura has picked up on it, Rahul has picked up on it. It's just awesome. It's just
to go
Look that up. But I was also
It's
just going to
just
say, everyone,
beautiful.
we'll keep in touch with Mike throughout.
Who's Mike?
Mike Bithell throughout this process
The
of launching this
composer.
video
Games?
game.
Who just
how
launched
that's
Solitaire
going for
Conspiracy
him.
that I can wishlist right now on Steam?
You should wishlist it right now.
I will. I really. By the way, can I ask?
Troy has people who wishlist for him. So go on.
Are you going to keep it exclusive to Steam, or are you going to move it out to other?
It's on Epic too, right?
It's on Epic as well. So they've been really cool. Say again, sorry?
iOS, put on iPad.
So, I mean, bluntly, honestly, it's always a case of, with these shorts, because we try and keep the costs down so we can take the risks, we always go PC first and then go from there. So with Circulars, they did really well, so they ended up on Switch and on iOS as well. If this does well, then yeah, we'll probably explore those, but like I need to see good reviews, and I need to see like the sales to justify us going over elsewhere.
Way
That's
to
good to know.
passive aggressively talk to the audience. I need to see some good reviews.
Hint,
this
then
in
we'll talk.
place.
Work for you, and then me.
I just really, this is the same thing. Like, I really wanted, like, I keep pushing Jack Attridge. I was like, can you please put Erica up on iOS? And he was like, sure. Do you want to pay for it?
I mean, for what it's worth,
ultimately-
ironically, it was originally for that. They were
I
going to be
know,
iOS.
and then they
That
got a
was
great
where
deal
I
with
first
Sony.
played it, right? I feel
Yeah.
like I played a prototype on an iPhone years back.
You did, yeah. That me too. And then the deal with Sony was subsequent, and they had to they had to re-engineer their tech to work on PlayStation. And then because the entirety of development happened in that tech, to get it on iOS, it has to then be re-engineered. You can't just go back to the pre-Sony because they learned
ports
everything.
Are hard. And especially with those guys as well, because that's a lot of very bespoke tech they built for that. Like, I'm lucky that I use Unity, so like porting is hard and expensive, but it's not as hard as expensive as I imagine their project.
I suspect also one of the biggest challenges with Erica porting to mobile is that Erica is basically 40 trillion QuickTime videos
I really
that
want
are
to play
being
it.
connected.
It's so good.
The file size for iOS, like it's just hard to crunch a game like that down to mobile because it's literally it's HD movie files. Like you can compress the shit out of stuff. But
how long is it?
It's a feature length. It's about a 2-hour game, but there's like something like over 5 hours worth of footage because the branching is just out of control.
Well, that's the clever thing
music
with sound
that you may
stuff,
never
like telling
hear
lies
if you
that
don't
they-
get to
you
certain
get
parts in
those.
the game. Like you will not hear certain cues that Austin Winfrey, who was the composer of that game.
It's
And
true.
that's a separate, very fascinating conversation. But holy shit, I'm being heckled by work and I have to go.
It's true. We've been very indulgent.
Like two guys in the Muppets going, "Hey, I wouldn't listen to her podcast."
Pretty much, yeah.
I have other stuff to do too, and Mike Bithell has a game to.
Mike has a haircut to attend to.
I have to get a lot of Chinese language strings into the game right now.
There you go.
That's my job for the
Austin,
evening.
nothing at all. He just play piano, hang
Chilling
out
out.
Yeah,
He
it's
shipped Pathless.
with his trophy that he
He's
has up
done.
there. I think.
that's
some reason.
that's a Dundee.
Always feels further away.
That's a Dundee.
Pants are confirmed, by the way.
I got pants are confirmed. I did that that was a David Blaine
That could have
trick.
been a really different podcast. It's like, this is how we get our
amazing.
YouTube video.
Although if you
No
look carefully, you
pants
can
by
see
Austin.
I am in
Things took a
fact
turn.
not wearing
Shoeless.
shoes.
But will you please go buy a new pair of shoes, by the way? Are those still
Those
are
are
the
new.
ones?
No,
Oh, okay,
I
you
did.
got
I
new
finally I reached a situation where the holes were. It was more holes than shoes.
He was
So
like, my feet feel very liquidy right now, and it's like, that's blood.
oh well, yeah, that was separate. The lining
That's
wore off
real?
so much. The lining
Yes, real story.
for like 2 weeks straight, every pair of socks had blood stains on the heel because the plastic was just jutting out so severely. And
How did
Troy
you
was like,
follow
I
it
think
up
it's
for
time
2
to buy
weeks?
new shoes.
Austin.
Look, what can I say?
for too long.
Here's the
By the way,
problem.
he has
I-
a pair of
2020's
socks.
taken its toll on
A
all
pair
of
of
us.
socks.
Here's
Austin and I could not be more different.
Oh my god.
Here's my defense. I wear shoes like 9 minutes a day because I put them on to drive to the studio and I immediately take them off and then I
True.
put them on again at night. So I'm like, what's
You
5
used
minutes?
to ride your
of-
bike, by the way, or you used to walk to
I did used to walk to the studio. I didn't have a car for a year and a half. I walked to the studio, about a 40-minute walk. It would not have lasted more than a day, and that's probably what accelerated the death of those shoes to the ankle bleeding state they were in.
Don't
I love ending on this note. This is just a
bleed.
perfect way
Jesus
to round
Christ,
out.
Austin.
Also,
our-
here's a much better. I want to give everybody a Splinter update. Splinter is doing quite well. We've been feeding him almonds every day.
Oh, yeah, I
Mama
forgot
squirrels,
about
baby
Splinter. Cool.
squirrels.
Thank
Mike was not
Splinter's-
prepared for the emotional investment, as I
Splinter.
recall.
Yes.
about
Splinter-
No,
Splinter's
no, I
doing
couldn't.
well.
I'm feeling comfortable getting invested
Glad
now. It's
Splinter
been
is
long
good.
enough.
Yeah.
I think I have
good
pictures
great.
to send you. Okay, go
All
get
right.
heckled by work.
Bye everyone.
Bye.